Hello, I'm Gareth.
And I'm Shane, and welcome to Building Business Resilience.
This is a podcast from Sanctuary Financial Planning, which helps growth business owners and social media influencers achieve financial independence.
We're two passionate financial planners on a mission to seek out new ideas, tips and tricks to help you take control of your finances and run better businesses.
We delve into the true goals and aspirations of our guests in order to provide you with some real value and positivity.
Nothing outrageous, clear, simple, solid financial solutions. We also have a YouTube series to accompany this, and details will be at the end of the show. So let's move on to our guest.
Welcome back to the Building Business Resilience Show. It's episode 18, and today's show, we're going to be talking to Josh Llewellyn-Jones OBE. Born with cystic fibrosis, Josh was given a 10% chance of surviving for his first night due to complications. Growing up, he was told he wouldn't make 30. At 32, he's a world record holder, ultra athlete, international motivational speaker. At 29, he completed the World's Fittest Man challenge to become one of only 5 in the world. The following year, on the 29th September 2018, he became the first and only man to lift 1 million kilos in under 24 hours to raise awareness for cystic fibrosis, beating the old record by over 500,000 kilograms. Josh has a huge passion for fitness, motivating others, and raising money for charity. It's going to be a great chat to Josh. So without much further ado, let's get started. Hi, Josh. Welcome. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, mate. Yeah, really good. Really good.
Good afternoon, Josh. Hello.
How are we?
All is good, sir. Thank you for joining us.
No problem. It's my pleasure.
How's things? How's lockdown been treating you?
It's all right. Do you know what? I think for me personally, the first 6 weeks, I was like, this is great. You know, I don't have to go anywhere. I can focus on my training. It's just me and myself. And all I've got to worry about is my food and my training. And that is it. And I was like in the zone, ready. And then I was like 6 weeks after, I was like, I'm bored. I'm really bored. So yeah, I think, you know, obviously I'm vulnerable. So having cystic fibrosis means I've got to be a bit careful. So I was shielding for like nearly 4 months. And whilst, you know, I like my own company, it does start to drive you insane after a little while. And there's training, obviously, that I'm used to when I'm going out and, you know, with my trainers and my friends training. And, you know, I just haven't been able to do it. And I'm very limited by what I can do at home. So I'm looking forward to just getting out there now. And I've been on a couple of cycle rides, which was nice. And I just can't wait to go swimming and actually get back in a gym environment. That's what I'm looking forward to the most.
Yeah, I saw you've been cycling. I was going to say that, but I guess apart from that, then you haven't really you stayed within the boundaries of the house, then I guess.
Yeah, I've played golf a few times. I'm trying to get my handicap down to single figures. It's not worked so far, but yeah, I think the outdoor. I love the outdoors. I always want to be outdoors. I think we've been incredibly lucky with the weather.
Yes.
If the weather was bad through lockdown, I think it would have been even worse for everyone mentally.
Yeah.
So I've managed to get out, but yeah, most of the time I've been in the confines of my own garden, which isn't massive.
Yeah, I was going to say it's kind of. I think you're right. We've said this a few times, but I think the weather's played a huge part in this. If it had been anything else, you know, it would have been tough, you know, especially when like you can find like you kind of like, I've been able to kind of get out because I don't particularly have to kind of shield or anything like that. But I can imagine mentally it's been quite hard kind of going towards the kind of latter part of it. But it's probably nice now, I guess you've freed up a bit of space now. You can get out on the bike, whatever.
Yeah, that's not so bad now because I'm going out on the bike a few times a week, which is good just to sort of vary my training because I've just been throwing a barbell around and a kettlebell in the garden for a couple of months. And obviously there's loads of exercises you can do, but you know, it does get a bit repetitive. Golf's been good. But to be honest, really strange. I've been doing online shopping, obviously, and getting it delivered. And I haven't been in a shop for like 4 months. And I'm not a shopper, by the way. I hate shopping for clothes or anything like that. But I do love my food. So I do like to pick up things and just have a browse. And I've kind of missed that, actually. I have actually missed that.
I have to admit, end of February was the last time I was in a shop after ripping the Achilles. And like you, I think it's been difficult. And I have nothing in the same lines as you, but the inability to do any sort of exercise has been horrendous. And I was on crutches for the guts of 12 weeks. So there was, even with the good weather, there wasn't the ability to do anything. And, I got a Watt bike that's arrived recently, and, with the app and Zwift, it's a different world. I'm not going out on the bike because I'm up on the bike at 5:15 in the morning for a while. It's just a different world now, being able to go out, and I'm cycling around London every morning, but just the ability to get the heart pounding again and get back into exercising, it's a different world.
I think that what people have I love it. I think it's great that people have used this time to get into exercise and become more active. And I think the first few weeks I went online to try and buy some fitness equipment. I was like, I physically can't get hold of anything, because all these people who have never done fitness before have gone out and spent thousands on stuff now. And there's people like me who genuinely need it day to day. And I'm like, I can't get it. So that was a bit frustrating at the start. But I think it's fantastic that everyone sort of had enough time to create, hopefully, long-term habits and good positive habits. I think people have finally sort of started to realize how important exercise is for mental health. Because I've always said this, that my fitness regime and what I do in my life obviously helps my general health and well-being with having a lung disease. But mentally, if someone took exercise away, I would be a different person, and I'd be a very negative person, I think. I said to my friend the other day, actually, I said, I'd spent a few days, because I had an ankle injury. I tore the ligaments in my ankle last year before my challenge, and it's been dodgy ever since, really. So I thought, lockdown will give me a good time to kind of recover and rest my body and get it back up to sort of like 100%. And after a few days of sort of taking it easy, I was like, God, you've got to be motivated to be fat and lazy, haven't you? You've got to be motivated to make sure you sit down all day, every day. I don't know how I'm quite motivated to stay fit, but they're incredibly motivated to stay unfit. And I find it incredible. I can't do it. I just can't do it. So yeah, I take my hat off to them, to be honest. I've got a newfound respect for lazy people.
So you're basically saying now that it sounds horrible, the couch potato now you're seeing as almost elite athletes for the ability to have an endurance of sitting on their bottom in front of Netflix for hours at a time.
Their dedication is phenomenal. I work so hard to keep myself firing on all cylinders, like a lot of the time. And as an athlete, you have to be able to peak when events come round and things like that. But I don't know how these people do it, how they sit still and just hardly move for like hours and hours on end. Everyone likes a bit of a session of Netflix and, have your own time and stuff like that. But how people do it day in, day out, I just do not have a clue. I just don't.
Let's chat about it later, about the challenges you've done and all that. But are you basically saying that somebody's ability to sit down on a sofa for 48 hours and go through a full, Game of Thrones or something with, 8 bars of large Cadbury's milk tray or Cadbury's chocolate plus X amount of crisps, and that is a greater challenge than anything you've done so far?
I'd say that would be more of a challenge for me than my challenges I've completed. I've got to be honest. I will admit to enjoying junk. I've always enjoyed sweets and chocolate and biscuits and crisps and all of that stuff. I've got a bit of a sweet tooth. And I will admit to enjoying a can of cider now through lockdown. I've got into not a bad habit, but I'll have like one every couple of nights and I just relax a little bit, but I'm still doing my training, right? Take the training out of it. And I just don't know if I could ever do that for a sustained period of time. I just don't. And I'm so fidgety. I mean, even now I'm sat down and I'm like, I want to get up and go for a walk around. That's just the nature of who I am. So,
I think I think it's a learned behavior, isn't it? I think like anything, it's like you get the habit of training becomes a habit, but I think also the habit of being kind of sedentary is the same thing, isn't it?
I'm going to pick up on something there. You've got you with your being an elite athlete, and you've got an award from Her Majesty. You've got last week's we chatted to, or was the week before, Neil Faki. Also got an award, and also an elite athlete. You're talking about having cider in lockdown. He's talking about him and his wife started tasting wine tasting in lockdown. Jeez, come on, guys, you're elite athletes. You can't be talking about wine tasting and cider now in lockdown. Focus.
I've become to sort of love, I wouldn't say the finer things in life. That's certainly not true because it's cheap cider. But I would say I've started to enjoy sort of what some people would class as normal life sort of things and habits and routines. But, there is a part of me. I'm not suggesting that Her Majesty the Queen should give out awards for people sitting on sofas drinking cider, but I do think that it's taught me. One of the things I think is really, really interesting on this thing actually is about habits, and I'm always 100 mile an hour. I'm always going after the next challenge, and I'm always sort of like, okay, I finished this, right, what's next? I always want something straight away. I can't rest and just wait around. But lockdown has almost sort of forced me to sort of reflect on my achievements over the last 3-4 years, where I've come, how far I've come. And I think mentally I probably needed that time to sort of I've probably analysed my performances more in the last couple of months than I have done with my team ever before. And focused on my weaknesses more than anything, just to enable me that once I come out of lockdown, I'm in better shape than I was going into lockdown.
Now to keep eating the sweets and drinking the cider.
I have put on a bit of body fat. I'm not going to lie. I've gone up from something like, I think I was 10.5%. I've gone up to over 12% now. So.
Oh, wow. That's terrible.
Holding it.
Oh, God. Wow.
My life's done this.
Oh, brilliant. No, that's interesting. I'd hate to think what my body fat's going up to in lockdown. We won't even go there. So for the listeners' purposes, I guess, let's touch on CF. I guess your journey from growing up. So tell us about that, Josh.
Yeah, I was born in 1987 with cystic fibrosis, and at the time, not much was known about the disease. It was fairly new in those days, and as soon as I was born, I had a distended bowel. My parents obviously knew that something was wrong. The doctors quickly took me off my parents and said, "We need to operate straight away." And after a few hours of the operation, I came out, and they sort of handed me back to my parents and basically said, hold on to him. He's got 10% chance of surviving the first night. So it was a pretty rough, 24 hours for my parents of what should have been a really exciting time. My dad went to the library in the Heath Hospital in Cardiff, where I was for the surgery, and quickly looked up cystic fibrosis in a book and saw that the average life expectancy was early teens at best. And I think it's safe to say at that stage, it was kind of like, it's uncertainty, it's the unknown. And I think it's the fear of the unknown that sets in a lot of people's minds. So I was 2. We went over to Dallas, Texas to stay with friends. And little did my family know that a full day's assessment with the top cystic fibrosis doctor in the States was set up. And at the end of that day, Dr. Bob Kramer came into the hospital into the hospital room with his team. And my dad simply asked, what do we do to give Josh the best chance in life and give him the longest life possible? Because the life expectancy still was early teens in 1989, 1990. And he said, exercise. He said, run his legs off. When he wants to stop, pick him up, make him do it again, and then throw the bastard in the sea and watch him swim. So those are his actual words to my parents. And with 2 older brothers and an older sister, it was fair to say I was never treated with kid gloves. I was thrown around. I was battered, bruised, roughened up. And to be honest, it did me the world of good. It really did. It certainly toughened me up. So when I went to play sport in school, captain of football, cross country, and I played well in the rugby team as well, it sort of gave me a love for sport and made me very competitive when I was toughened up by my brothers. They tackle me as if, bear in mind there was like a 7 and 9 to 10 year age gap between me and them as well. So when they were tackling me on the field at home, it was a proper tackle. And I went to school and got tackled. I was like, that's not a tackle. So it was kind of like, I enjoyed that really. But I think, at 15, I was school cross-country champion. I'd won the school cross-country race 5 years in a row, beaten the previous record that was held for 20 years by a long way. Then I represented Wales in the national championships when I was 15 in the under-21 squad. And I never wanted to be known as the runner with cystic fibrosis or the sportsman with cystic fibrosis. I always wanted to be known as the number one sportsman, full stop. It was never something that I wanted someone to look to me and have sympathy or anything like that. I just never wanted that. So I left school after GCSEs. I went to Radacomp actually to do my A-levels, and then it wasn't for me. It just wasn't. I thought, I want to get out in the real world. I hate classrooms. I used to gaze out of the window for hours waiting for the bell, thinking, when can I go and play sport? Because this is killing me. And my parents I was really fortunate because they were supportive of that attitude as well. It wasn't like they were forcing me to do my homework all the time. They were like, they knew it was good for my health to get out and exercise. And that was the sort of key really. And I was 17, decided I wanted to raise money for cystic fibrosis, and decided I'd climb Kilimanjaro. And, at 17, it's like, well, you're a bit young for that, But I went up and did it. And to make it a bit different, I organised a boxing match with former European heavyweight champion Scott Welsh at the top at 20,000 feet. And when I said to him, I want to have a fight with you on the top of this mountain, initially he was like, who are you? And I was just like, well, this is my story. This is what I want to do it for. And he agreed. So we had a 3-minute sparring match, which was bonkers because we stripped to the waist at like minus 15 degrees Celsius and just got our boxing gloves. No one knew we had gloves in our bags because if we'd have told the porters, they'd have been like, not allowed because of altitude and stuff. So no one knew. And everyone was sort of like having their photos and stuff on the top. And me and Scott looked at each other, gave each other the nod, and we just sort of opened our backpack, started stripping off, and everyone was like, what are you doing? We're like, oh, we're gonna have a fight. So we put our gloves on, and there's a photo of us literally just in tracksuit bottoms almost, having a boxing match on top of this huge mountain. But what was amazing is that all of the support crew, and there were lots of them, instead of like sort of saying, no, guys, you can't do it, they started circling us and everyone took their cameras out and started taking photos and filmed it and stuff. And it was obviously just a bit of a PR thing. We were hitting each other, but it wasn't like properly going at it, obviously. I'd suffered from nosebleeds and headaches all the way up. So, Scott was like, oh, I'm not going to hit you in the face and stuff like that. I was like, oh, okay, fine. And I thought, this is my opportunity. So I landed one on his chin, and it was not the hardest punch I've ever hit, but it was, it was up there. I gave it some. His head just didn't move. He was like twice the size of me anyway. He didn't move and just looked at me and shook his head. And I thought, what have I done? Like literally, I'm in trouble. And he did. He hit me back. Caught me, and that was it. I was like, right, okay, we need to stop now, don't we? So we did it, but it was amazing. We raised £125,000. It was just incredible, and that kind of set the store really for the rest of my life and fundraising days, really.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, no, that's good going, especially kind of at that age. I guess so. CF then is a lung condition. How is it different from, I guess, how we are, myself and Shane, really?
Yeah. So cystic fibrosis is a disease that not only affects the lungs, it affects the digestive system and other vital organs by essentially clogging it up with this thick, sticky mucus. So for the lungs, it makes it hard to breathe. That thick, sticky mucus gets into the lower airways, the smaller airways, and then eventually, as you age, it will get into the bigger airways as well and start blocking those up. So now I take 50 odd tablets a day, between 50 and 60 a day, to digest my food and vitamins and other supplements and things like that. But it's very hard. The only thing that someone has come up with in the past is it's as if you were to hold your nose and breathe through a straw. That is what it would be like to breathe with cystic fibrosis. There are some fantastic drugs. In fact, yesterday we had some great news that Kaftrio, a new drug formerly called Trikafta, is a triple combination drug which basically helps the actual root cause of cystic fibrosis. So people with lung functions as low as sort of 20-30% on this drug have been able to increase by 30-40% within weeks. So it's phenomenal. We've made some huge gains in the last few years, but there's still a lot of work to be done. There is no cure for this disease. There are lots of different gene types, so lots of different sort of strains of cystic fibrosis. And I've always, from Dr. Bob, unfortunately he passed away a couple of years ago, and I've always been adamant of carrying on his legacy of exercise within cystic fibrosis is key. And there's one thing that not a lot of people will know about CF is that two people with CF can never meet because of cross-infection. So we carry different bugs in our lungs, and it can be fatal if you were to pass that bug to someone else with CF. So, when we talk about socially distancing, we've never been able to come within 8 feet, 10 feet of another CF person. So socially distancing to us is the norm almost. When you go to any event, you've got to make sure you're not coming into contact with anyone else. So, so through CF Warriors, my charity, and what we do online is we try and engage these children into creating positive habits in sport and exercise from a young age, because we know then that if we can create this positive community for them now, they're more likely to sustain that sort of mindset long term, and keep those friendships and relationships, because it's quite an isolating disease. So yeah, it affects, every bit of you, CF, effectively. It's hard to put weight on, which my friends hate me because I'll never be fat. So that's one thing I love about it. But yeah, so it's very complex, but, I think there's a lot more hope for children these days than there was when I was a kid.
Wow. I was never aware of the social distancing with the people with CF. It was new to me. So wow, it's that's a hard thing to do. Does that affect you then, getting on things like traveling on planes and stuff like that? Do you need to know in advance, or do you have to make people aware? Or
I haven't, if I'm honest. I know parents generally do look into it now that it's more sort of known, but you may see some people with CF. I mean, you'll see them definitely now wearing masks.
Yeah.
And they'll have the high grade masks as well. I think they're the N95 masks that they will have. But even historically, you will see you would have seen people with CF and families with youngsters with CF having masks on. And actually, I think they've had some bad rap in the past for wearing masks in public, because I think everyone's natural reaction is to look at them thinking there must be something wrong with them that I could catch. That's why they're wearing a mask, where actually it's the other way around. So I think it's good, actually, that awareness around wearing masks and protecting yourself and others has come about through COVID. Weirdly, there are a couple of things that I think are good things to come out of this horrible pandemic. But I've tried for years to raise awareness around lung disease and what it's like to, and not just what it's like, but also to make people understand how lucky they are. To have a healthy set of lungs. So don't smoke, don't damage a good set of lungs. And I'm quite passionate about that point. But, I think what COVID's done is it's naturally raised awareness, almost reaching every person in the world around how important your lungs are and how important it is to protect them. So in a weird way, everyone in the world now is aware of a lung disease, a lung condition. Okay, it's COVID, it's not cystic fibrosis, but, with CF, there's only 100,000 of us in the world, so it's a rare disease. 10,000 in the UK and 100,000 worldwide.
Wow.
So it's very rare.
It's not a big proportion whatsoever. No. You've been shielding for quite a long time now, and it's probably fair to say sport or fitness doesn't play a part in your life. It is your life. So how have you adapted to the whole last 4 months?
It's very strange because I had a challenge lined up for April. I was set to run 24 marathons in 24 days for Rays of Sunshine, a children's charity in London who grant wishes to seriously ill children. And I was finishing on the London Marathon. Actually, that was the 24th marathon was the London. And I was gutted. I was absolutely gutted. It was at the very last minute we cancelled it as a team because even though I was sort of shielding, I could have jumped in the car, gone up to the field up near me and probably run 26 miles in a field every day for 24 days. And I would have done that. But we then decided that generally from a PR point of view, for raising awareness and raising money for the charity, it just wasn't going to do it justice. So we decided to pull it, which, for me, physically was okay. I was okay with it physically, but mentally it was tough because, as an athlete that does sort of ultra endurance events, you train all year round to peak for a specific event, a specific moment. And I don't think people quite understand that you can't just turn it on and off. It's not like a switch. It's weeks leading up to it. And then all of a sudden you should be at your fighting best. To then say, you're not doing it now, we're going to move the date. You can't just move it by like 2 to 3 weeks. If you're going to move it, it goes to like next year. It's not just a case of, adapting for a couple of months. So we knew that was the outcome. And then I started thinking, right, okay, well, how long is this going to last? There's an element of uncertainty with this thing. What am I training for? What am I going to do later on this year? I wanted to do 2 other challenges later this year. So my training has had to adapt whilst I've been at home. So it's been tough. It's been really tough. And I said to my friend literally yesterday, it feels like I'm unemployed. It's a really weird feeling because whilst, yes, my sponsors have stood by me and they're there for the long run, it's almost like I've got no office to go to. I've got nothing to do 9 to 5. So whilst everyone's being furloughed, I feel like I've been furloughed as well. But mentally, to try and pick yourself up as an athlete and, it's the team, it's the camaraderie with the team, because even though there's just one person doing the event, I've got an amazing team behind me that make everything happen. I've got my nutrition laid out, my training plans, my physio 2-3 times a week. It's to go without all of that. It's almost like your life is on hold for like, who knows how long. So my training, I've gone back to training that I enjoy and actually makes me really happy, not like grueling sessions. I'm just like, I hate this, but I'm going to do it for 6 hours anyway. It's like, actually, what exercises do I really enjoy? Let's just do more of that to keep my mind ticking over. I've had to adapt my goals because obviously there's no challenge date for this year yet. There still isn't one. So, what goals am I going to set myself? Because even though I'm locked down, I'm isolating, I still want to achieve things. I don't want to just stop everything. So, like getting my handicap in golf down to single figures has been a goal of mine. So I've been chipping in the garden. I haven't got a garden left for for divots. But yeah, so I've been practicing my chipping at home. I've got out on the golf course now the last couple of weeks, which has been really, really good. So that's a goal of mine in the next sort of 6 to 12 months to get my handicap down. And really sort of looking at, okay, well, I don't train for aesthetics. I train for purpose. And so it's very hard when someone says, oh, are you going to lose mass or like put on muscle mass? Those things they're not that important to me right now. But just feeling good about myself and feeling fit is really important. So those are the little things that I've kind of focused on more than anything.
Is it almost like a business that, a business have set out a year plan, and they, as much as there's a 12-month plan, there's probably 90-day plans as well, and all micro actions that have to be done every day or every week to achieve that overall goal. And this is your business. That is your business. You're not going to an office. So in one way, because of all that's happened, you've had to adapt as a business would, change all of your annual goals to, and revisit your 90-day plans, set new goals to achieve, and look at the micro actions. So your business, you as have to adapt, as a business would normally, I suppose, in everything that's happened.
Absolutely. And I think people might look at me and think, oh, okay, well, he'll get paid by sponsors to do an event and that's it. That's his income. But actually, I'm a speaker as well. So I had talks lined up with Facebook and Google in May, and they got postponed till like June 2021. Now that's income to me. So, and I had like 6 talks in June booked as well. So like I was rammed with talks and speaking and appearances. So for me, it's like, oh, where's that money going? Like it's gone. It doesn't exist anymore until hopefully 2021. But that's an incredibly long time to wait to invoice that business, and it might not even happen. Who knows? We just don't know. So I've had to adapt my mindset and thinking, okay, well, my income isn't going to be as great in 2020 as I thought it was. But there's no reason to sort of turn around and say, oh, damn, I've got to stop now. And sort of like almost feel really demotivated. If anything, it's motivated me to be even busier in 2021. And I think when you look at my sponsors have been absolutely fantastic. And, I physically couldn't do what I do without them, because I'd have to have an office job or a day job, or, a 9 to 5 where, I'd have to try and fit 6 to 7 hours of training in around a 9 to 5. It's physically impossible to do. So, and I think the great thing is actually Land Rover sponsored me literally weeks before lockdown. So I was actually really fortunate to have that, before this whole thing happened, and they've been amazing, and they're with me for the long run as well. So it's kind of like, it's a kick in the teeth. But at the same time, when you look at your sort of short-term goals and thinking, okay, well, I wanted to give a talk to Google and Facebook. I've always wanted to talk at Google to their staff. That was always like a goal of mine. It came off and then got taken away from me within like 48 hours of it being signed off. So I was a bit like, shit, you go from like being on such a high to then an instant low, and you think, right, I need to pick myself up because this is only temporary. And I think that's where my mindset has been throughout this whole lockdown period. As frustrating as it has been at times, it's like, it's only temporary. This isn't going to last forever. So why should you like sort of mope around and worry about tomorrow, when actually, if we focus on today and what we're doing to sort of make the boat go faster, then we're going to be in a better place tomorrow naturally anyway. So, I think physically with my training, I've had to adapt. Obviously, I haven't got the equipment in my house that a gym has, or, you know, wherever I'd normally train. But, you know, the long-term goals have just been pushed on a little bit more. They haven't necessarily changed. It's just the only thing that's changed is the timeline, which is fine, you know. It's
And it gives you the chance as well to devise your top 10 of ciders as well, which you wouldn't have had a chance of.
Exactly. And I'm not going to mention any brands because they haven't paid me. But, but there's an opportunity there I've just come up with. There you go.
but no, I think you're right. It's kind of, I think we're very similar. We're really focusing now on making 2021 and onwards the kind of the big one for the business, really. You know, it's given us time to kind of reflect on things within our business and the way we do things, and personally as well. You know, there are some pluses, you know, with this, you know.
I think you have to. It's definitely given me time to reflect on what's gone wrong during my challenges, as well as what's gone right, because it's very easy to celebrate the wins without really taking into consideration what could have gone better. You know, throughout my previous year's challenges, I'll be honest, and Steve Martin, a good friend of ours, obviously a mutual friend of ours, we were talking about the 1,000,000 kilo challenge, and in my head, having a chat with him afterwards, like, oh my God, everything went right. That was amazing. And he was like, I was there. No, it didn't. I was like, it was almost like I was blindfolding every negative part of that challenge out to make sure that as soon as I crossed the line, I just focused on the good stuff. But yeah, this lockdown has definitely sort of forced me to sit down and think, right, okay, well, why did that go wrong? How can I stop that from happening again in the future? And to be honest with you, most of the things that go wrong generally are my fault in my challenges. So I can take ownership of that and actually change things, as opposed to, you know, there's only been one time where a team member didn't quite work out, and they didn't really last very long, because the thing is, for me, it's not like in a business, say you have like 6 or 7 people in your team and there's one bad egg, you know, it might be, you know, you could afford to maybe keep that person on for another month and it won't directly impact your business too heavily. Your business isn't going to go bust overnight by having one bad egg out of 6. For me, in a 24-hour or 5-day challenge, the kind of the lines are so fine in winning and losing that one bad egg can make a huge difference just in an hour. So if that person's not working out, they got to go. And it's nothing personal. It's just they're not a good fit. So yeah, I've had that once, but it hasn't happened since. I worked out I was far too trusting in the past, and I've certainly toughened up. But my team are like, they've become my best friends, to be fair.
I think it sounds like you're treating yourself as a business, and the way I mean that is, Gareth alluded to it earlier with us, of during this time now, people will either sit down on their arses and watch Netflix and go, oh, I'll start doing things in September, October, or they'll dive into their business and see what has gone well, park that, and what's not gone well, and how they can adapt that to change something, so that when we all come out of this in the end of this year or beginning of 2021, their business is going a lot faster or more profitable than it was in the past. So it almost sounds like you're taking the same mindset of, let's just have time to reflect when I can now, just pick all the bits and pieces out, look what did go wrong in the past, why did it go wrong, analyze it, and then learn from that, so that when and if it does happen in the future, we know that it can be easily rectified, and so it should be more, in a business case, profitable, but in your case, more successful, I suppose, with the challenges that you do going forward. So it could be seen as a very, very positive thing, that has happened for you as well as businesses, I suppose.
Yeah, and being really honest about it, my sponsors will pay if I'm successful. They'll stay with me as long as I'm successful. But if I set a challenge every year and keep failing, I guarantee you they won't hang around for very long. no matter how good their intentions might be. For instance, with the 1,000,000 kilo challenge, if I attempted, say, that every year, and the first year I did 500,000, the second year I did 600,000, the third year I did 7, they're eventually going to go, are you ever going to get there? Like, we're spending all this money. What is the point in us doing this if, it's just you having a crack at something?
Yeah.
It's, and that's why I've sacrificed so much in my life to make sure that this works. And at the end of the day, it is my career. And how successful my career and my business is directly sort of, it's only as successful as I'm going to be during my challenges. Because you can talk the talk 11 months out of 12 and say, this is what I'm going for. I'm going to nail it. Please sponsor me. Please support me. But unless you're going to turn up with the goods on the day, you've just wasted 11 months of your life. And, you've not really committed anything to that goal. And it's very much, my business is obviously about, primarily raising awareness and showing people, whether they've got CF or not, just showing everyone what is humanly possible if you put your mind to it. And that's really been my kind of raison d'etre from the day one. The only reason why I want to do these challenges is because, yes, to raise money, but essentially I want to show people what's possible. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, well, what is possible? How far can I go with this thing? What have I got to do to break my body? Because ultimately, and this is coming down to my experience now, people want to see broken people. Let's make no bones about it, right? If I did the 1,000,000 kilos easily with a smile on my face, no one's going to be interested in that.
Absolutely.
It's not groundbreaking and no one's going to see any pain. Therefore, they're not going to watch it for very long. But with a broken hand 2 weeks before, the odds against me, and the pecs torn off my chest after 6 hours, and I went for 22 hours and 11 minutes. That's what people want to see. They want to see me throwing up. They want to see me in a hellhole. And listen, why do you think that, in the triathlon I did last year, the 21-mile swim, 200-odd-mile bike from Dover to London, and then a 160-mile run home to Cardiff, after mile 42 of the run, and this is no word of a lie, after mile 42, I ran a 21-minute 5K, and then I did the next 6 miles in under 40 minutes. And we put a video up of the 5K PB, thinking, when the link to the Just Giving page, thinking everyone's going to donate. That's awesome. That's such a good performance after like 3.5 days of throwing your body through crap. He's just performed like his best PB, huge performance in his 5K time. Then 6 miles. This is going to go mental on the internet. Literally, like 20 people shared it, and we were like, "What is going on?" That night, I'm in the back of an ambulance on oxygen. That almost goes viral, and the Just Giving page goes up by $6,000, and we were like, "Oh, great! So that's what people really want to see." So we just posted more of the crap stuff of me in absolute agony, ankle taped up, throwing up on the side of the road. That's what was needed, and that's what people want to see. It's a bit sadistic, but
is that a motivation for you then? Is it because go and get a job in an office and work 9 to 5 and go to the gym at 5:30 and do a good 3 hours, and you have a normal life in a nice way. So what basically motivates you to go through hell and back, and for people to enjoy seeing you,
You've got to be hellishly motivated to have that boring life, haven't you? I think for me, I've grown up with doctors telling me I wouldn't reach my 30th birthday, and let's not mess around. That has some sort of mental impact on anyone. Having a life expectancy, I believe everyone should have a life expectancy. And that's not saying, guys, you're going to die tomorrow. What do you want to do? That's saying, like, it forces you to live. It forces you to look at your life and what's really important. What goals are you going to set? That are not goals like I want a Lamborghini, or I want a nice big house, or I want a villa in Spain. Not those kind of goals. I'm talking about life-changing goals where, I'm not saying everyone's going to want to go and lift 1 million kilos in under 24 hours, because I promise you, not everyone wants to do that, and I wouldn't actually recommend it. And not just because I want to keep the world record, but I want to be on my deathbed, looking back, going, I achieved everything I set out to achieve, and I had one hell of a time doing it. And I could think of nothing worse than, and listen, I get it. Some people like the office job. Some people like going to the gym for an hour or two a night with their friends, having a chat on weekends and going to the pub and stuff like that, each to their own. For me personally, that's not living. That's not really going to motivate me to truly live and understand what it's like to truly live. The feeling I get, I'll try and explain it. So training for an event, 11 months of the year, that month of the event, then you have obviously a bit of a rest period. And then that day comes. The adrenaline in your body that morning, when I was walking into the gym in St. Athan to lift 1 million kilos, and there was ITV documentary being filmed, there was the social media videos on me and everything, and I was walking up to do with a broken hand, I was walking up to do the first set on bench press to start the whole cycle of lifting. And I knew that there were going to be kids and people all over the world, hopefully, looking at this going, oh my God, look what this guy's doing. He's got cystic fibrosis. This is going to be possible for anyone to do. If this guy can do it with CF, all of my goals are going to be achievable. And it's just hopefully motivating people to go out and get life and actually do something with their life. That adrenaline I had was phenomenal. It wore off after about half an hour, and then the pain really kicked in. But then when I'd completed it, that last rep of 1 million kilos, I just broke down. I just cried. My team around me were just like cheering, and everyone was so happy. There were like 40 or 50 people in this environment just watching me. Cameras were rolling. Everyone was like celebrating, and the emotions just came over me, and I was like, oh my God, like I believed in myself 100%. And I think I was the only person that actually believed that lifting 1 million kilos in 24 hours was possible. But it hit me then of how many people I'd proved wrong. Because so many people, you wouldn't believe the comments on social media, in the press articles. There were even comments on like Wales Online posts saying, this guy's obviously just doing it for the PR. It's never going to be possible. The previous world record is like 475,000 kilos. It's just, he's only doing it for publicity and it's a stunt and all the rest of it. And I just broke down because I was like, I fucking done it. I can't believe I've just fucking done it. And there was a part of me then, and then the hand started throbbing again. My chest was just in bits, and I was like, guys, you're going to have to pick me up. I can't move. There's something weird about that feeling that I love. And knowing that I've taken my body to pretty much its absolute limit.
Walk me through your head at that last second. You've just done it. Is it, yes, I can't believe I've done it, I want a bar of chocolate, or just let me go to bed, or geez, the pain is unbelievable, or right, what's the next challenge? Because it's not natural, it's not normal to push yourself in that amount of pain. So what happens at that very end?
It's a bit of all of that, to be honest. But one of the things that I had during the event was actually melted Ben & Jerry's ice cream through a straw, because there was no way I could get the calories in fast enough. And I'd thrown up like 6 or 7 times. My heart rate was 189 for 3 hours, and it averaged 155 across the 24 hours. So my heart had been working overtime, and my body was broken. The 3 stress fractures through my hand were just literally, my hand went numb after a while, because I was like, I just can't feel my arm. And my legs, my glutes, my hams, everything. My mate came up to me like the week after, oh God, I just did a massive gym session. I've got massive DOMs. I was like, mate, don't talk to me about your DOMs. I don't want to know. I was like, I've lifted 1 million kilos. But it was it's really weird. When I got the world record in 10 hours, or just over 10 hours, and everyone sort of celebrated that moment. And that was amazing. But then it dawned on me that, hang on a minute, I've said I'm going to over double the world record. I've got to do all this all over again.
Yeah.
And then when I got the million, I'll be honest, it was, even though it was a huge team effort and I could not have done it without my physios and my trainers, it was a lonely place, like a really lonely place, because being a world record holder it feels amazing for a little bit. I'll be honest, it wasn't the main driver for me in being called a world record holder. It was more to show that someone with CF can be number one in the world at something. That was the main thing for me. But if I'm honest, being the only man in the world who's lifted 1 million kilos in under 24 hours, no one else in the world, mentally or physically, understands at this moment in time what it's like to do. So I can tell you how much it hurts. I can tell you emotionally how many times in my head throughout those 24 hours I was thinking, if I give up now, it'll still be good enough. And people will still give money. People will still be amazed by how much I've done. But you'll never truly grasp what it physically feels like to wake up the next morning after having done it and feeling that absolutely every inch of you, no joking now, every inch of you is just as if you're just going to break apart, your bones are going to break, and you just feel like I can't, let alone walk down the stairs, I can't get out of bed. Like I went for a bath because I was like, I want to soothe in this bath now. So I put out like some salts in the bath, loads of bubbles. I was like, oh my, I felt like well, I'm not going to say actually, but I got in the bath and I was just like completely relaxed, sat there for like 10, 15 minutes. And the handles on the bath then, I was like, oh, I'm bored. I need to get out now because I'm like, I don't want to sit in cold water. And I went and I couldn't physically pull myself up out of the bath. And I was like, shit, what am I going to do? So I hooked my arm over the bath, leant over it and just fell out onto the floor. That's the only way I could get out of the bath. And, for your body not to be able to function properly, I had like hardly any motor skills left. But yeah, it was a lonely place. And I think the one thing I didn't want to see another barbell for forever. I was like, I'm done with weightlifting. That's it. That's my peak. A couple of people have tried to break the world record since and failed after, I think 4 and 6 hours. At the pace that I set. So it was 755 kilos every minute for 22 hours and 11 minutes. And that I think is, but I want someone to break it. I do want someone to break it. Just to have a chat with them to go, feels horrible, doesn't it?
How many calories did you have to burn through?
I think I was averaging something like 700 an hour, as in I was eating 700 calories an hour whilst lifting weight. So like I said, most of it came from Ben & Jerry's, to be fair. So I didn't have Ben & Jerry's for 6 months.
You'd be really good now on your, we'll quickly go through some of the challenges you've done now, but maybe if a lockdown challenge of, the whole of Game of Thrones, one after another, on the sofa, sat in your arse, just munching through popcorn and crisps and chocolate. 700 calories per hour, you're probably going to be able to double that.
It's too much for me. That's a challenge too far, I feel.
Tell us about the other challenges.
So that was actually my second annual ultra challenge. My first one was the World's Fittest Man challenge, which I looked at, only 4 people had done, and I wanted to do it as a celebration to hitting my 30-year milestone, really. If I'm honest, it was a bit of a flip the finger moment at all the doctors and everyone that had doubted that I was going to live that long. So that was a 24-hour challenge, 3 2-minute breaks, and it was to lift 100 tons, cycle 100 miles, run 10 mile, row 10 mile, cross-train 10 miles, swim 2 miles, and then do 3,000 sit-ups, 1,000 press-ups, and 1,000 squats. And I started training for that, and I had a trainer, Darren Campbell, ex-Olympian, was training me. But his training was more sort of mental preparation for the day and as opposed to physical. I kind of did my own programming thing for that. And I did that. And it was amazing because Dr. Bob Kramer, we shared a birthday, the 31st of July. And the finish for this challenge was like 2 days before. And he traveled, I think was he 80, I believe. He traveled all the way from Dallas to see me on the finish line. And we had a joint birthday party 2 days later together. And unfortunately, that was his last ever trip. He sadly passed not long after that. And I was just privileged to have him there, the guy that told my parents when I was 2 to run his legs off, and then 2 days before my 30th birthday I'm physically training my legs and arms off for him, and for the legacy. So that was pretty special. But I finished that in 22 hours and 10 minutes. And then my trainer looked at me and said, listen, you've promised all these kids you're going to exercise for 24 hours without stopping. You've got an hour and 50 left. What do you want to do? And I was like, right, okay, yeah, let's jump on the rowing machine then. So I actually rowed 20 miles instead of 10 to finish. And it was like I was in bits, but it didn't take long again, only a few days for someone to say, well, you told us it was going to be an annual challenge. What's next? And I was like, well, feels kind of crap being 5th person in the world to ever complete this because I feel like the 4th loser and I need to go for like number 1. So that's where the 1,000,000 kilo world record came up. And then last year, so the year after the 1,000,000 kilos, I decided to do something completely out of my comfort zone and different in a triathlon. I'd never done triathlon before. Even though I'd run cross country, it was always like 4 or 5 milers. It was never anything sort of too long distance. So I decided to do a 21-mile swim, a 200-mile bike from Dover to London, where I was really lucky that Prince Charles invited me to cycle into his house, St James's Palace, for lasagna with my team before running 160 miles home, so 6 marathons back-to-back to Cardiff, all in 5 days with no rest. So that was last year's challenge, and I'll be honest, it was brutal. I wouldn't say it was as physically draining or it wasn't as physically intense as the 1,000,000 kilos because obviously it was across 5 days. But the swim was like 14 and a half hours. And then I had a McDonald's and then half an hour after I jumped straight on the bike in horrific weather, like the worst I've ever experienced. And I really struggled with the bike, if I'm honest, really, really struggled. And then the run was just like, it's really hard to explain. When you start off on a 160-mile run after like 2.5 days of just incredible just endurance, and it was just like I was broken already. You can't see the end. Like you don't know, you can't even fathom how far 160 miles is on a road. So I was like, up until Bristol, I was just like, guys, I was motivated, but I was just like, I didn't know where the end was. I didn't know where the finish line was. But I crossed the Severn Bridge and I broke down because I was like, oh my God, I feel like I'm home. And it wasn't like I broke down, I'm proud to be Welsh kind of thing. It was nothing like that. It was just like, I know how long I've got left. I can kind of picture, I've done this drive so many times. I know how long it is from, the Severn Bridge to the Millennium Stadium, or Principality Stadium. So I broke down, and that was the last 5 miles was the easiest 5 miles I've ever run in my life. I literally just like, I didn't feel anything. I was just had so much elation. I was just like, oh my God, my legs are all right. My ankle injury's gone. Like, why have you strapped it up? And the boys were like, it's going to hurt in a bit. Don't worry. So yeah, I crossed the line, and I think that we raised about 30 grand doing that. And it was phenomenal, but I found a new love in swimming, if I'm honest. It went from being the weakest of the 3 sports for me to the strongest. So yeah, I think in the future, I'd like to do some big swims. 21 miles was a lot. It was like 1,350 lengths, I think it was, something like that.
Oh, wow.
It was a long way, but, I did start to love swimming.
We chat a lot about, because there's been a lot of sports people that we've been talking to about mental toughness and mental strength, and how do they get through, when we have a bad day in the office, you have a bad day in the office, Gareth might see me and I go, do you know what, I've had enough, go home. When someone like a sports person has a bad day in the office, they may be playing in front of 20, 30,000 people, and we kind of ask them how they park it. it's a bit different. How the hell do you put on a brave face or park when you're going through a tough time? Somebody might be playing football or rugby for 90 minutes, 80 minutes, and that's it. How the hell do you park the bad times? So you said there you just had the McDonald's and you jumped on a bike. How do you get through that? What?
I think you've got to there's an element of my team are there to support me in completing the event. They make safety calls. Overall, 99.9% of the time, I get the overall say. It doesn't matter how bad a place I'm in. If they say you've got to stop and I'm saying, no, I'm keeping going, I'm keeping going. And that cycle ride was brutal. And there was a point where St. John's ambulance were behind and they were 20 metres behind me, bear in mind in a moving vehicle with the engine on, and they could hear me breathing going up the hill. And I was breathing all the damp and stuff like that. And they pulled me over, did my SATs, and I was like as low as something like 75, I think, my SATs, where they're normally like 99. So they knew that, I wasn't right. And I'd gone from a really warm pool into a freezing cold, wet, damp environment. And my heart rate was all over the shop. It wasn't consistent with what I'd trained for, anything like that. So they pulled me off for an hour in the ambulance. But those moments, I think, are the test of your character. On a good day, I say it's easy. It's not easy, but it's easier if you're firing on all cylinders and you go out and you just find it like, okay, I'm in the groove. I know what I'm doing. I've done this 1,000 times in training. This is easy now. But if you're not firing on all cylinders, but you've got to keep going, because if you stop, if I stop, I'm going to regret that so much.
Yeah.
Because I don't look at a challenge, and I know other ultra athletes do, by the way. Some of them look at a challenge like, oh, well, if I don't do it this year, I can always come back next year and do it. With me, it's not like that, because I don't want to do this again next year. I want to do something different, something more interesting. Like, there's no way anyone could turn, even a sponsor, if a sponsor turned around to me and said, we want you to lift 1 million kilos again, I'd be like, no, I'm not doing it. Because it's like, I've done it and I know I'd get bored of the training if I had to do it again. But B, what's the point? What am I gaining by it? So for me, it's like every year has to be a different type of challenge. And that's why I try and make myself like a bit of an all-round athlete, a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none kind of thing. But on those bad days, I have bad training days. We all do. But I think it's important to understand that it's temporary. And I always go back to this thing of temporary pain, because if a challenge is 24 hours, 5 days, even if it's like a month or a few months, it's a bit like, well, there's an end point to this. And the more I moan about it and the more I think about the negative impact of this state of mind I'm in right now, the further away that end point is. So what can I change now for the positive? How can I make myself faster or just more comfortable? Because that end point will be closer than I actually think. And then once that's done, once I've reached that, it's done. And then I don't have to worry about it again. And I can move on to something else. So I think, like in business, because I've had a failed business before. I had a marketing agency a few years ago before I started doing these challenges. And we were doing really, really well. And then I decided to go and do these challenges and realized I can't run a marketing agency and train for the stuff that I want to do. And I always dreamt of being a professional athlete. And then when my first sponsor came on board, I was like, this is it, I'm done. Like, this is the career for me. So I'm not the type of person to say, oh, I'll put 20% of my time here, 20% here. I'm like, no, I'm all or nothing. So I gave it everything I got. And I knew I had to drop the marketing agency. So I dropped that. And me and my brother, we just focused on this. So I think for me, it's like those bad days, they are temporary. But you're right. It's hard because you almost talk yourself into feeling like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be doing this. But I think it's when you're in a bad place, it's very easy to forget why you started. It's very easy to forget, that feeling of what it's like to cross the finish line. I think once you've crossed the finish line of an ultra endurance event once, you go one of two ways. You either get the bug for it, like I have, and you want it, or you want that feeling all the time, you want that high all the time, or you just like, I ain't going through that again. Yeah. And then you never do it again.
Yeah. It's crazy. We had a guy on a few episodes ago, Fergus Connolly, and he chats to sports teams and stuff like that. And I asked him one of the questions about the mental strength, mental toughness. How do you instill that, or how do people have that? And he came out with a really good line. He said something like, it's the ability to focus on what is critical at that point in time. And you kind of go, yeah, do you know what? He said, that's all you're doing, is you're getting rid of all of the noise, and you're just focusing on that moment in time. A bit like what you said, I think, earlier, of not worrying about the crap now, because the more you think about the crap now, the longer it's going to take to get to that end point. Whereas if you stop thinking about it in a negative term and crack on and become quicker, then you're going to get to the finish lines faster, and then the pain will go even quicker.
I think as well, there's an element of what I do in the training, which mentally and physically prepares you for what you're likely to go through on the day. And that is key. And I think that's the difference between an athlete and an ultra athlete, where not necessarily that, I'm not saying we train harder, but what I'm saying is that we'll probably push ourselves to the point of, like, for example, I push myself to throw up in training, especially when I was lifting the weight. I'd regularly do sessions and I'd have to keep going until I threw up, and train to faint as well. So a couple of my trainers were like ex-Royal Marines, and we did sessions where it was like, okay, well, we want you to understand what it's like to faint. Okay, great. So let's train. Okay, awesome. So like the intensity level is like nothing that you could ever imagine until you've actually done it. So then when the training comes around, the challenge day comes around, and they're like, smash this down you, get this milkshake down you, and then go squat for, 7 hours. All right, great. So you start throwing up, and everyone, even the cameras, were like, oh my God, he's in a bad way. And they were like, no, it's fine. Don't worry about it. And I threw up, and I was like, right, under the bar again, bang, just carry on. And it was almost like robotic.
Yeah.
And because I'd experienced it, I knew it wasn't like a sign for me to stop. It wasn't a signal saying I'm done. It was a signal to say, all right, I'm working hard. I've been here, I've done it. And I think much like business, I think you've got to be, whether you're like a new business or an old business, established, I think you need to understand that, you need to look at every single sort of element of that business. What could go wrong? Prepare for that to go wrong. If it doesn't, it's a bonus. Because that's what I do with my challenges, is that, okay, what could go wrong? Well, there's like 1,000 things that could go wrong on the day, but you can only control the controllables. And then if something goes wrong, which is out of your control, don't worry about it. And don't be hard on yourself, because you couldn't have done anything about it anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. 3 things that people will be really interested in, because they probably listen to all that and they want to know now, in a nutshell, a high, a low, and a funny moment. And probably they want to know, a graphic low, because that's all people want to see. As you say, they have no interest in going, the high has been when I just finished that 1,000,000 kilo challenge. No, they want to hear the pain you've gone through.
The high for me, to pick out one, it would probably be the end of the 1,000,000, because that was a massive milestone for me mentally, for the team, definitely. I'm still celebrating it now, and I'm like nearly 2 years later on, and I probably will celebrate it for a long time until someone breaks it. The lows, I have got a list of lows. I've got a longer list of lows than highs. I wouldn't say it was a scrap as such, but it was like during the 1,000,000, and if you remember back earlier where I said about cutting people from your team, like a lovely guy was my physio, lovely guy. I won't name him, but he was he'd been with me for quite a few months leading up to the challenge, and we'd got on really well, in fairness. And then I went to a really, like, one of the darkest moments I've ever been in my life during that 1,000,000. And I was sat on the leg press machine and I was so tired. I think I was like 16, 17 hours in, and I was so tired. All I wanted to do was sleep. And my body, as you can imagine, was just in bits. And on the leg press, it was like one of the leg press where you're sort of almost lying on the floor. So I'm led there now, and my neck was really hurting from the squats. So they put a pillow behind my head just for a tiny bit of comfort during the challenge. And I led down like that. And one of my trainers had like I think he had like some food anyway that he was like feeding me because I couldn't lift my arm. He was feeding me. And I was like, guys, I just need like 5 minutes. Can you just please give me like 5 minutes? And like, they were like, no, you can't sleep. I was like, oh, okay, fine. And I waited until they were all looking away, and I just closed my eyes like quietly. And as I closed them like that, I thought, oh, this is so nice just to relax. One of my physios just went like that, whack, and he whacked me across my chest. And that had been like agreed, right? And one of my trainers even said, like, one of the things, and they did this to me to try and wake me up properly, was to punch me. One of the things is to punch you on the end of your chin. So your head just knocks and you're like, shit, and it just wakes you up. And they'd done that as well. So that was like all agreed, pre-agreed. They were allowed to do it to me, and I wasn't allowed to kick off afterwards, right? So those are the two techniques used. 10 minutes later, I was just like, I'm still fucking knackered. So I closed my eyes again. And then one of my other physios, which wasn't pre-agreed, just put his finger under my nose. That's all he did. He didn't whack me, he didn't punch me, he just put his finger under my nose. It was the most irritating thing I've ever had done to me. If ever you want to annoy your partner in bed while they're sleeping, just put your finger under their nose. It's horrible. And he did that. So I whacked him and said, don't fucking do that to me. And he went whack, and he whacked me across my chest. So we just had this like hitting contest back and forth for like 30 seconds. And the best part about it was captured on camera by ITV. And the producer came over to the girl with the camera and said, did you get that on camera? And she was like, yeah. He was like, oh my God, that's going in the documentary. And I was like, afterwards, I was like, guys, listen, I'm not going to lie. I was in a really bad place. If you put that in, I'm going to look so bad. I'm going to look like I'm picking on my team who were there to help me. And in the end, they dropped it. But that was like a particularly low moment I can laugh about now. But at the time, I was just like, I was ready to go to war with this guy. It was horrendous. Throwing up and stuff has just become the norm. And that, I don't really see it as a low point anymore. It's just part of the process. I think one more example of a low point would be last year in the run. I had like blisters on top of blisters on top of blisters. And I think we were like, I don't know, like 60 or 70 miles into the run. And I'd had to pull up on the side of the road, and I was sat on the pavement. I was like, guys, my feet are so hot. You need to sort these blisters out for me. And they took my socks off, and they were like, just one of them was just covered in blood. And I was just like, oh, this isn't good. So they peeled the sock off, and my dad pulls up in his car, and we were like, we haven't got anything to like treat the blister. And Reese, one of my, he's also an ultra runner. He was one of my support runners. Said, have you got like a knife or like anything like that? And my dad had this old rusty, like little knife in his car door, right? So he comes out, he said, oh, I've got this. So Reese goes, oh, that'll do. Opened it, and you could physically see the rust on the outside of the blade. And he just cut the two blisters out of my my foot, on the sole of my foot. But he went a bit deep, so he went just underneath the blister. And I felt every ounce of pain through my foot. And it took every ounce of me not to just lash out at him, but I knew it had to be done. That was quite a low point, but probably quite a funny one as well.
No, I was going to say that's the funny part people want to hear.
But yeah, there's loads of points, and I think it's probably fascinating for people to watch what actually happens behind the scenes, because you see all the nice things on social media and some of the low things as well, like me throwing up and stuff like that. But the actual things that happen, within every sort of hour or two, are quite fascinating to look back on.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. Well, I guess last thing now. So what's next for Josh now? Challenges? I guess it's difficult to say, but
Yeah, it's quite difficult because there's nothing truly sort of set in stone at the moment. Everything's up in the air as regarding to dates and stuff like that. I'm speaking to Land Rover about a couple of ideas, but it's difficult because I'm trying to come up with something that is more mind blowing than 1 million kilos, to be honest, and that's quite tough.
I've got an idea.
Go on.
Do you know how everyone is doing couch to 5? Why don't you do ultra to couch?
Do you know what? I think it's a great idea, but I'm not sure how much sponsorship I get for it.
Well, it's a bit like that Gogglebox, isn't it? People will pay to just watch you on YouTube, just sat there stuffing your face, watching Netflix.
Maybe I can do it in a Land Rover. That kind of gets the brand in then, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, it's difficult. I think, I want to do a few different things. The 1 million was very specifically weight training and only weight training for a year. I'd love to swim a channel. I don't know which one. I'd love to do the English one, but I don't see that as a standout challenge as such, as being like monumental. But yeah, there's lots of little things that I want to do, but it's coming up with one that's going to, blow people away and think, and actually get them to sit up and listen and think about it.
Yeah, I guess it's trying to top the last one, isn't it? Type of thing.
I think for my career, it has to be bigger and better. Not just for my career, actually, but for me mentally. I've pushed myself to, a degree. What is going to test me to the next level again? And I think I'm always going to be searching for that.
Run from one end of Korea to the other, from south to north.
That's not bad. What's the scenery like? The scenic route.
You want a bit of scenery, wouldn't you?
Josh has been absolutely superb.
Yeah, thank you
for having me, guys. Thanks for having me.
Superb. Thanks, mate.
What an amazing chat with the 1 million kilo man. Thank you very much, Josh. That was really, really good. Head over to our website, www.sanfp.co.uk, to learn more about us and our journey. That's it for this episode. Next, we're talking all things food, London and lockdown with Sean Wynne Owen, head chef at River Cafe. You can hear that wherever you get our podcasts. Plus, don't forget to click subscribe to get all the latest episodes as soon as they arrive. Don't forget to listen to our new Chats at the Bar series every Tuesday for a short insight into business, money, finance, aspirations, dreams and planning. Also, if you're enjoying the series, please do leave us some feedback with a quick review, as it helps to grow and ensure we're giving our audience the best experience. Until next time, thank you very much for listening.